an ultimate global podcast. Hello, and welcome to our special weekly podcast on trending international and social affairs. You're listening to Saurabh Kora and George Mavros from Sydney.
Well, welcome again to another exciting episode of the Ultimate Global Podcast. And in this episode, we are talking about creative ways of exploring new jobs in 2023. I think this is a very interesting topic, considering the kind of problems people are facing in finding jobs, finding the right jobs. Vinesh has joined us today as our guest speaker, and he's helping different job seekers who come to Australia as immigrants, and also he helps international students towards how to find jobs, and he also does some sort of consultancy for students because he's himself gone through the same journey, pretty similar to my journey as well, Vinesh, because I also came to Australia as an immigrant from India. So I kind of relate to the challenges that a lot of immigrants face because of visas and other kind of stuff, because of cultural adaptability and things like that. And I think this year has been tremendously bad because there have been a huge amount of immigrants coming from outside, um, and they have struggled to find right jobs. I know that because I've talked to some immigrants recently, and they shared this with me. So I think this is absolutely the right time for us to actually discuss with you more about what you are doing, and what do you think are some of the creative ways of exploring the new jobs in Australia. So where do you want to start off with, Vinesh?
Thanks, Saurabh. Appreciate that introduction. So so I'll probably introduce myself first. So I'm Vinesh. Arrived in Melbourne 5 years ago and really struggled to get my first job. So that's what defines me actually. Although people think that job search is such a bad journey, and sure it is. When you are in that phase, it's such a dark time to go by. But looking back, that has changed me as a person, and that has defined me on what I do right now. So I really struggled to get my first job. It took me about 8 months, and I came here on a PR. I had 7+ years of experience as a software developer, and this was back in 2018 when the market was actually booming. It wasn't too bad, but I still struggled a lot. And looking back, I know what I did wrong, what I did. I didn't probably do anything right, and then eventually it just kicked off. But once I got a job, I started sharing stuff in small ways through LinkedIn by blogging and different media, and that has now evolved into something big that I do these days. So I think I kicked off my meetups and my journey in back in November 2018, when I just put a random post and saying, "Hey, would anyone like to have a quick chat on how your job search is going?" My idea was we'd get to a food court, 2 or 3 people. We could, I don't know if this is the right word to use, but pitch about job search. That was my idea. But that sort of got a lot of attention, and 39 people said, "Hey, we are interested to catch up." And I'm like, okay, this is not going to work on a food court. I need a bigger place now. Um, and I am a person with high introvert qualities. So my um, first reaction was, "Hey, I'm not going to do this. Let me run away from it." But something made me go towards it, and I booked a room in a library and said, "Hey, let's see what happens." And 20 people gathered in that room, and we just shared our stories, and that created a massive impact on the 20 people that attended that event. And some of them are really good friends of mine today. So that's how my connection or my network started as well. Since then, I've organized over 100 events across 5 years in Melbourne and Sydney, and I do a lot of events even now. And to recognize my achievements through LinkedIn, I'm also LinkedIn top voice, just making sure that, hey, I'm not faking things here. I'm the real deal. So I'm just putting the point across. Now, when it comes to job search, yes, Saurabh, what you mentioned is 100% correct. This year has been incredibly hard. And there are a couple of factors in there. One, the immigration has boosted up after COVID. Two, the market has gone down. So it's a deadly combination, and that has created a lot of struggles, especially for migrants over here. Before we go into what are the creative ways or how to job search in the future, it's very important to understand what the current um, or what the traditional job search is. So let's pick on, or let's get to what is traditional job search. And I think it's very important to understand what traditional job search is, because 99% of the migrants that I talk to, or people who are new to Australia talk to, follow the traditional job search ways, and they get incredibly frustrated when things are not working. So it's important to understand, okay, what is traditional job search and what are the other ways to job search. Traditional job search is you see a job ad online, you apply for it, wait for a call back, you get a call back, and progress through next levels or whatever happens after that. That's it. Um, if you ask most people, that's all you can do during job search. There's nothing more to do, right? Just apply and apply for as many as you can. And most people think that is the start and end of job search. But that's not applicable anymore, especially in this technology driven era where there are different avenues, where there are different market challenges, where there are different sourcing mechanisms for recruiters. um, the applying online market is still there, it's active, but it's probably the least effective way to job search, especially if you're considering the Australian market. That's probably the least effective way to job search. So that is traditional job search. You apply online, wait for a call back, get the call back, and go back and forth and get to the end of it. This works, not saying it doesn't work, but by going through that journey, you're embarking on a very unrewarding journey. You'll get hundreds of rejections. Your morale will be down to zero. So if you can push through that, if you can survive through that, good for you. But I don't think any human can survive or sustain that job search strategy anymore. So that's traditional job search. Now let's see what more we can do in the job search area, right? So there are different strategies that are floating around. There are different terms that are floating around. Most of them have um, scare tactic behind it. I don't want to scare you. You know, you will hear terms like hidden job market, you know, where only people who know people can get into it, which is sort of true. And is hidden job market really hidden? I don't know. I don't think it is. It's just that you have to look at unconventional ways rather than conventional ways when you're looking for a job. Local experience is another word that um, migrants hear a lot, and I'm sure Saurabh, you've gone through that as well. People say you can't get a job in Australia if you don't have local experience, but that becomes a chicken and egg problem. Then, you can't get a job if you don't have local experience, and if you can't get local experience because you don't have a job, so it becomes a vicious cycle as well. So there are a lot of things out there, but I think it's important to understand where all these are coming from and um, how to overcome these obstacles. Do you want to stop me or anything, Saurabh? Or I keep going?
You know, we just go with the flow. So I think you're talking about some really relevant points there. What are some of the two or three ways that you would pick up that any immigrant who is listening to this episode can go back and apply that in their life? Either it can be on LinkedIn or outside of LinkedIn through networking.
Yeah. So before we get into that, I want people to really understand why you have to try different things. You know, people say, hey, apply online, things will work. But then when it doesn't work, people say, hey, continue applying online, it'll just click one day. um, it's very important to understand the supply and demand dynamics in this country. The market is relatively small and there's massive competition over here. So when a role comes up online, the competition is crazy. Your resume might be perfect, you might be a perfect match for the role, but unfortunately, luck plays a role in getting your resume selected at that point of time. So it's very important to add brownie points to your application. This is something I try to connect with people. Sure, applying online, good, but don't stop there. Add brownie points to your application. It can be done in different ways depending on what you're comfortable with. Could be a simple phone call. Pick up the call, uh, give the recruiter a call and be curious and ask a few questions about the role and introduce yourself. That can go a long way. Send an email. Find the recruiter on LinkedIn and send a message on LinkedIn. Find the hiring manager if you can and send them a message. All these adds or increases the chances of your profile to be picked up when you're applying for a role. You have to get into that mindset. I think mindset is the number one factor when it comes to job search and the struggles for migrants specifically. Yes, job search is hard, but it's a journey. You have to try different things and get there. Sorry, got distracted from your question, Saurabh. So coming back to your question, what are the few things that you have to do, or what are the three top things that you have to do if you're looking for a job here? Don't just rely on online applications. Get out there and try to talk to people. That's number one. So talking to people has multiple advantages here. One is the connection you get. Two is the mental health improvements that you have when you talk to people. Three is understanding what works here, or should I upskill on this, or should I target this roles, or should I do this? All these answers come from your network or the people that you talk to. So go out and talk to people. Second thing is take care of yourselves. Yes, job search is hard, but don't make it the sole mission of your life. You have family, you have friends, you have life, and you're in a new beautiful country. Explore it. Work, consider job search as a full-time job. Work 9 to 5, take your weekends off, take breaks whenever it's required. Three, pivot when things are not working. Don't hold on to one thing and be the fly that keeps hitting on a window. It's trying to come in, but it just keeps hitting on a window without trying to get in, without being able to get in. So you might be doing all the right things, but in the end, you're just hitting that wall again and again. So you have to pivot. You have to see if there's a door open and take a different direction at times. So don't be stubborn and burn yourself out doing that. So those were the top three things that I would say, what migrants or any job seekers for that matter should focus on.
Yep, I might also bring in George here in this discussion because George has been my personal professional life mentor after I came to Australia. So he's seen my journey in Australia very closely. And I think he knows about every small failure that I actually went through while I was applying for the job, which I'm sure we're not going to discuss in detail here, George. But if that was what you were coming up to. But I
There
want
are
to know
some
from you.
things. There are some things that I won't talk about without asking Sarah.
Yeah, for sure. But I want to know from you, George, because you have guided a lot of immigrants coming into different programs like interchange and other competitions as well. Where do you find is the real gap? Is it in, of course, in this year the opportunities have gone down, but is there something which the students can also pick up while they are studying, according to you?
Yeah. So, firstly, let's talk about the hidden job market. The hidden job market. I can't remember exactly, but I think it came out somewhere. I'll say late 1970s, somewhere mid 1980s. Somebody made some comment about that, and it became a publicised thing that 80% of jobs are fulfilled through referrals and networks, and this is the hidden job market. There is definitely a hidden job market. There is no doubt about that. There is a market of getting employment through referral and networking systems. But a lot of those jobs are still advertised. So hey, Sarab, my company's put up this ad for a new widget maker, and I'm pretty sure you do widget making, so why don't you apply? And when you do, my boss, Vinesh, I'll tell him that you're really good and blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot of that goes on. I mean, that is no different to me getting consultancies and people getting sales through network marketing. But there's still a heck of a lot of jobs that people apply for. And what I'm seeing a lot more of now is recruiters actually headhunting. So my wife was approached by recruiters 2 out of her last 3 jobs, right? So she was where she was previously. She was there. She wasn't 100% happy, but she wasn't actively looking. And then suddenly a recruiter rang her and said, look, I've looked at your LinkedIn and I think you'd be a real candidate for this job. Now that one, she applied, she was interviewed on the Wednesday, was accepted on the Friday, and started a week later. So how does that all happen? It's exactly the same as when you get the hidden market. If your resume doesn't talk about you correctly, if your experience isn't shown, and you don't promote yourself to the job correctly, you can get all the inside running that you like. It's still a lousy resume. And the thing that I find mostly with students and with people from overseas, they don't bother getting somebody to look at their resume in Australia. So if I was applying for a job in America, I would not take my Australian resume. I'd take that and I'd give it to a recruiter in America and I'd say, how does that look? What do I need to change? Right? If I was going to India, I'd ask somebody in India, what do people in India look for? Right? There are, if you're applying for a job with a school that is run by the Church of England or the Catholic Church, they want to try as best as they can to find out what your religious background is. And if anybody thinks that doesn't happen, they're in dreamland. Now, we might not be able to ask point blank, but I guarantee you that it's. And if you stop and think about it, if you're running a religious backed school, you don't really want somebody coming in that doesn't believe in God. Not a good fit. Okay. And I'm not making this about prejudice or whatever. It's just a fact. Okay. So for me, you need to get your resume checked by somebody other than your mother and your father who just says everything that you do is wonderful. You need to get it done by a professional, and people tell me that costs a lot. And what I say to people is, if you think a professional costs you money, wait until you do with an amateur. Then you really pay. Okay. Go and get a brain surgeon to give you a quote, and it's several $1,000s. But if anybody's unhappy with that, I'll put my hand up and do it for 500. Which one would you rather get to do the job? So the other thing is, I don't think people practice enough before they go to the interview. So an interview is a sale. You're trying to sell yourself to the person that's interviewing you for the job. So when somebody says to you, oh, what's your experience, Vinesh? And the first thing you go is, oh, well, you don't sound very professional. But if somebody says, what's your experience in relation to this job? And you're able to say, well, I've done this. And if you have a look at my resume, 3 years ago, I did that. And previously, my job that's the one before that, I did a bit of this. Then you're coming across. So, but I'm interested, Vinesh, in you're saying there's creative ways. What's your creative ways of looking for jobs?
Thanks, George. I'd like to touch on a couple of stories that you mentioned there. One, you mentioned that your wife got headhunted for that previous two roles. And this is something I also saw when I was job searching 5 years ago. So I clearly remember this thing. I was trying to get in touch with a recruiter who works at Electronic Arts. So I'm a big fan of FIFA, and EA Sports was like, hey, I have to get a job there when I knew that they're based in Melbourne as well. I think I chased him down through LinkedIn, email, phone calls for about 6 months and nothing. I mean, no response, not even a hello or hi or anything at all. Uh, I think 6, 7 months down the lane, I started blogging my journey. As in, it wasn't rocket science or it wasn't something crazy. It was just, hey, this is how I came to Australia. This was how my first few days was. This is how my job search is going. And one fine day, he just called me. I mean, I'm like, okay, what changed? And he just wanted to have a conversation with me. He didn't have a role or anything. He just wanted to check in how I was doing, what my experience was, what sort of role I'm looking. And it was like, okay, what just happened, right? So that's the power of when you do something different apart from just applying online. That's what happens. People start coming to you rather than you chasing them down, and that's a big thing that I found out happening when I started doing different things. The second thing you mentioned, migrants especially, they go to interviews unprepared, or they go to job search unprepared. And I've seen this a lot. And how I feel about this is you signing up for a game of chess without actually knowing the rules of chess. Unfortunately, a lot of people just jump into that. And there are different reasons for that. They're just seeing job search as a very transactional phase. You come here, somehow push through it, and you'll get to the end. And that's what, it's a very transactional phase, and you don't have to invest more time, you don't have to invest money, just get through it. Don't think too much about it. And that's an unfortunate mindset to have, and I don't think that helps at all. And that's where the brain surgeon concept comes into picture. I also personally think that you have to own your job search. Don't just pay the money to some resume writer and think, hey, I've paid this person $1,000, now he'll wave a magic wand. Not gonna happen. If someone says, hey, I'll give me $1,000, I'll guarantee your job in 3 weeks, run away from them. That's what I'd say. Nobody can guarantee your job in a particular time frame at all. It's a personal journey. That's something you have to take. Now, coming to the creative side of things, the easiest way, George and Saurabh, it's LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a powerful tool out there. You can do tons of things. It's not just a job search platform. It's not just a digital resume that you have. It's a social media, and this generation with social media, you can do all sort of quirks around that. So, for example, my name, I was just talking to Sarah before the session. My name is my brand. People know me by Vinesh Balan. What do I do? I'm Vinesh Balan. That's all, right? So I help migrants, I help international students, I help job seekers. But if you dig deeper into my LinkedIn profile, I'm a software developer. I work full time as a software developer. I just finished my day and I'm jumping onto this call. So I can define what people want me to know by and what brand that I'm presenting. I can make my voice heard. What are my thoughts? What do people think of how things should happen? And I can engage with a lot of conversation. So social media gives superpower, which can be used or misused depending on how you want to do it. But if it's used right, you can set up a brand which recruiters will chase you down rather than you chasing down on recruiters. And that's a very powerful position to be in. Unfortunately, it takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort, and it's a journey. It's a journey about exploring yourselves and expressing yourselves, which not everyone has the patience or energy to go through. And that's where I think most people um, think that there's not much value in doing those things.
So, Vinesh, I think you have touched upon really interesting points here. And from my personal experience as well, I can definitely tell you that I've committed those mistakes as well, where I am relying on the resume writer to present my story, which is one of the biggest mistakes, as you just pointed out, because you're there selling your story. Resume writer is not selling your story there. So there is no better person than you yourself who can narrate that story to the employer in a way that you want to sell yourself, because it's you and your personal brand that you are building on. And that was the same thing that I kind of learned over a period of time after doing that mistake for a couple of years, where I thought that you can always go to someone and ask for, oh, can you help me in this resume, or can you help me how to build a good LinkedIn profile and what all I can put in here. Of course, I think you can take guidance, but then what to put and how to put should be something which should come by yourself, isn't it?
Yeah. So if, for example, if someone hires me to get their resume done, I won't write a single word in their resume. I'll give you all the tools that you need to write your resume. I'll review it, but I won't write a single word. That's something I make sure that you go through a journey, you spend time, and you go through it. In the end, only you know what you've done. You're coming to a new country, you're talking to a recruiter, you're talking to a hiring manager. Don't assume that they know everything about you because they just read your resume. They know nothing about you. They might have skimmed through your resume, but that's it. And it's not their job to know what you've done. It's your job to showcase, hey, I've done all this and I can do the job that's on the table, right? So it becomes all your responsibility. It becomes especially tricky when you're an experienced professional, 15, 20 years of experience. You're coming here and you're being asked to prove yourself again. You're being asked to um, say what you've done. That becomes very tricky for them. But you're in a new country. Nobody knows you. It's on you to explain what you've done and what you're good at. That's entirely on you.
So, Vinesh, one of the last questions from my side before I pass it on to George, is possibly this misconception of that, oh, I'm an introvert, that's why I can't go out and network and I can't talk to people. So what is he talking about? How can I be more extrovert? Whereas my argument to that is always, that's fine, you're an introvert, but introverts have got very special qualities in themselves. If you kind of use those qualities instead of becoming an extrovert, you can still remain an introvert and utilize those qualities to network and talk to people. So
100%.
what's your take on that?
100%. It's very important to know what your strengths are. Like I said, I have high introvert qualities. If I see an unknown number in my phone, I've never picked an unknown number. It's like I'll stay away from phone calls. So I have high introvert qualities. In the 8 months that I was searching, I did not go for a single catch up or a meetup or nothing. I was just sitting at home watching TV, killing my time. That's what I'd say. But if someone engages me on a conversation about LinkedIn, job search, migrants, and any of those things, you can't stop me from talking. I can talk for hours about that. So I've realized that that's my strength. I try to engage in conversations that has my interest over there. But for example, if I go for another tech meetup, or if I go for some entrepreneurial meetup, I would probably be sitting on the back bench on a corner on my phone and just minding my business because I can't hold a conversation. So it's very important to understand what your strengths are. One, if you're passionate about something, go and learn about that and try to have conversations around that. Two, if you don't want to talk in person, use LinkedIn as a medium. For example, you can write, you can comment, you can share your thoughts on LinkedIn. That's a relatively non-confronting way to do it. Um, Three, there are very casual events. I think, Saurabh, you yourself are organizing network walks right across Sydney and different types of events. Just go there and see what's happening, what this thing is all about. Unfortunately, I don't think if you're coming in a new country and if you're just deciding that you'll sit in your room and everything should happen to me, that won't last long. And especially in this fast-paced technology era that we are working on, things change like just like that. You have to adapt to things, and you have to find what are your strengths and try to spend more time on that. So yes, I understand being an introvert is not a great thing, but you have super skills. It's just about identifying those super skills. You don't have to talk to hundreds of people. You don't have to go to drinks or parties and uh, have fun over there. That's not what networking is about. Just talk to one or two people. That in itself is networking. Those two people can connect you a network of people, that will look after you, that can mentor you. Saurabh, just like you probably met George through a networking event, or someone introduced yourself to George, that can lead to a great network and a relationship that will take you along through the ride.
Yep. Yeah, and I think my intention when I came here in the first 1 or 2 years was not to find the right people. My intention was, if I have an opportunity in front of me, I'll take it. Um, but I didn't have the fear to fail at that time. So I was like, what's the maximum which can happen? It's a wastage of my time. It's a wastage of that opportunity. That's the maximum thing which can happen. But I was ready to take that risk because I knew it's a new country for me. It's a new environment. I don't know anyone here. And it's I need to give myself more flexibility to do things where I can fail and I can succeed. And I think that's where I met George as well in an event, which if I had not decided to take part in that event, I wouldn't have met George. As simple as that. So, do you have any take on that, George, before we kind of end today's episode?
Yeah, there's a couple of things on that. But before I go there, I just want to clarify something that we came up earlier on. So I was talking about having somebody look at a resume for people, and you and Vinesh were talking about you don't need anybody else to do your resume. You can do that yourself. So I just want to clarify that point with the pair of you, because if you're saying that you shouldn't have anybody else help you write your resume, I totally disagree with you. Absolutely, categorically, unequivocally, totally disagree. If, on the other hand, you're saying you need to give the information to those people and then they help you do it, then I'm comfortable. And it's important enough to me that I want the viewers to understand that, because I am a professional sales and marketing person. And the greatest load of garbage I've ever heard in my 40 years of selling for people is nobody sells your product better than you. It is a nonsense. Because quite often when I'm dealing with PhDs, academics, high-end engineers, lawyers, any non-sales professionals, they don't know how to sell themselves properly, and that's where people like me come in. And so with the resume, I have people that say to me, can you write my business plan for me? And I say, no. Because if I write it for you, it's my business plan. If you want me to work with you to write your business plan, yes. So I would like Vinesh to clarify that part.
That's exactly what I meant, George.
Yeah. Cool. So, and I think that's important that the people watching this understand. The information has to come from you, yes, but just like I correct some of your English in what you've written over the months, Saurabh, a resume writer can. I have my work checked by copywriters. When I write my books, there's a copywriter that checks my work. There's an editor. There's a creative that'll. Now, I don't let them change everything, but there's certain things that I'll say, yeah, okay, that sounds better, or that's a better package. The other thing that I want to touch on is along the lines of what Vinesh was saying, where for a long time he sat at home and then he decided to actually do something and work out how to do it. A lot of people won't apply because if they apply, they know that there's a good chance that the answer is going to be no. When you ask for something, generally speaking, you have three options. Yes, let me think about it. No. When you don't apply and when you don't ask, you automatically get no. Ask, you've got 2 other chances ahead of no.
I 100% agree, George. That's the best way to put it.
Yep, and I think that's something which goes with everything, George. Just take this example of starting the meetup group that I run on the weekends. You can say that I wouldn't have started this group if I was thinking, oh, what if I start this group and nobody comes to my walk? Or what if I start this group and I become unsuccessful in what I'm trying to achieve? But what I was trying to do there is just to explore Sydney together with people coming from different parts of Sydney, and there wasn't any target that I had said that, oh, if this doesn't happen, then I'll just stop it. That wasn't the plan. It was just to do it consistently, show up every week, and then on the way keep on improving myself. Take feedback from people on what am I doing. Are you liking it? Are you disliking it? Do you think it's a good idea, or do you think I should do it a bit differently? And then I kind of kept on course correcting myself as I went on that journey. And I think sometimes people they're just afraid to take that first step, because they are afraid, if I take that first step and it goes wrong, I'm gone. Because they are afraid to fail. And I think that's something which is very, very important. Just remove that fear of failure from your mind.
That first step is the hardest. Be it a podcast. I'm sure when you started this podcast, you had the same thing. I was just talking to a person yesterday who wanted to really be active on Instagram and start putting reels. So she had 11 reels in line to be run, but she hasn't started on it because the first one is a struggle. So, but when you put the first one, the rest will start flowing by, and you'll just be consistent with that. So the first one is the hardest. Tons of pressure, which is self-imposed, I would say. When you put your first LinkedIn post or when you put a first podcast, very few people see it. So why are you why are you pressurizing yourself so much about that? So that's the first important thing you have to overcome, I would say.
I have people that say, when they're looking to buy something from overseas, and they say, but what if it gets here and it's not correct? And my answer to them is very simple. You do as much as you can to make sure it's the correct product before it leaves. And if you want to worry about the wrong product coming here, why don't we just worry about it being the right product and it's on the ship and the ship capsizes before it gets here? Why don't we worry about it getting to here and on the truck and the truck tips over before it gets to your factory? Why don't we worry about it being the right product on the right truck delivered on the right day and your factory burnt down? Like this, if you're going to worry about all the things that could go wrong, we wouldn't get out of bed. You have to at least have a go to give yourself a chance at the 2 other alternatives to know.
Absolutely. And with this, I can see my clock ticking, and I can see that we're coming to an end to this episode, which has been a really good discussion, Vinesh. So thank you so much for participating and contributing towards some of the common challenges that a lot of immigrants face. And I'm sure this episode will add a lot of value to a lot of immigrants, which I'm sure George and I, would be passing on this episode to after this is out on LinkedIn, and hope you can also reshare it.
Thanks, Saurabh. Appreciate this opportunity, and it was a pleasure meeting you and meeting both of you. Really had fun. I didn't even realize it's been 45 minutes since we started talking. So thanks for this opportunity.
This is an Ultimate Global Podcast. Hello, and welcome to our special weekly podcast on trending international and social affairs. You're listening to Saurabh Kora and George Mavros from Sydney.